Hello, it's Davey Mooney, coming to you from the University of North Texas, where I run the jazz guitar program. Benedetto artist, Sunnyside Records artist. The word is out, y'all. And I'm heading to Japan in a few weeks in September to promote this record with Ko and the boys. And I've got two Mehldau books. The new book is out. I don't have my copies yet. I think they're going to be in the mail shortly, but I've been hearing good things, good feedback from folks who have checked it out on jazz phrasing. It's called How to Achieve Great Jazz Phrasing, a Practical Method, very practical title. And we're here in this is the second week of the fall 2025 semester. Things are underway. We're getting everything worked out. You know, as Fred Hamilton used to say, the beginning of the semester is like drinking from a fire hose. So that's what we're all doing. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk about the Thelonious Monk tune, Monk's Dream. One of many wonderful Thelonious Monk competitions. This one, I just played it on a gig a couple nights ago. It's such a nice part of a set. Such a well-constructed, melodically kind of fun song to play and I think listen to for the audience. I sort of classify it as one of Monk's tunes that have cycles of dominance. I feel like he's got a few where you'll have this sort of that's from Monk's Dream, but tunes like Light Blue, Skippy is the most extreme example of that, Brilliant Corners. There's a bunch, you know. They're his ballads. So some of the ballads have parts like that as well, but that's definitely a characteristic of his composing. Just, you know, cycles of dominance a la Gershwin, or, you know, 5-1, 5-1s. C going to F, going to B flat, going to A, going to cycle of fourths type stuff. So there's many recordings of this song. My goodness, I was looking at on Apple Music, and I didn't have time to listen to them all, but a few sort of famous versions I would say would be the album Monk's Dream from the early 60s, I think 62 or 63. That was when Monk went over to Columbia, and he had the quartet with Charlie Rouse and Frankie Dunlop and the bass player John Orr. That's a great version. Also an earlier one on Riverside, the Thelonious Monk Trio, with I believe this guy named Gary Mapp on bass, who I'd never heard of, M-A-P-P. That's what Wikipedia said anyway. And Blakey's on drums on that one. You know, I love the Riverside Monk stuff. The Columbia one definitely has better sound quality. It's a little more like tight and maybe, dare I say, like professionally recorded. Of course, it's 10 years later. So, because I think the Thelonious Monk Trio is like 52, 53, somewhere in there. What else? Larry Young on Unity with Elvin. It's basically just like a duet with Larry Young and Elvin Jones. That's a great version. And Mehldau on Art of the Trio 2. Is that right? Live record with Grenadier and Jorge Rossi. That's like, you know, Mehldau. Mehldau's it up, I guess is the only way to put it. Just like shreddy and brilliant and creative and melodic and all that stuff. And faster than the other versions. And I grew up listening to the band Astral Project play this song in New Orleans with Steve Masikowski, Tony DeGradi, David Torkanowski, James Singleton, Johnny Vidakovich. So I've been hearing this tune for years and years and years. So just kind of go through the harmony of the thing. It's an AABA tune, and you have like C major 7, F7, B flat 7. C major 7, F7, B flat 7. So you do that twice then. C major 7, F7, D minor 7, E7, A7, A flat 7, G7. And the melody. Twice, and then the bridge is all C7, and you have this, a lot of versions, very dissonant, like minor seconds. The melody's like, but I think on a lot of versions, Monk will play minor seconds, so like C and B, D and D flat, E and E flat, and then like a G flat triad over C. noticed that I think on that Gary Mapp bass part, at some point at the end of the second half of the A section, he's going, or he's going up to a D flat. It's one of those things where the sound quality is not great, and the intonation's not that great either. So, but I hear him going up to a D flat. Also, I think Mehldau sneaks in a cheeky little A flat chord right before going back to the last A section. So kind of. Last A. So yeah, harmonically, and on the solos, I tend to even out those chords a little bit. Instead of having the da 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 thing at the end, I just kind of think like C, F7, B flat, C major, F7, B flat 7, C major, F7, B minor, E7, A7, G7, A flat 7, G7, sorry, rather than like that. And it could be cool if the band sort of plays those hits and that rhythmic sort of over the bar line thing, and you just kind of stick to your guns with the cycle. But if you think about it harmonically, you know, we're in the key of C, you got C major, then F7 is like dominant 4 chord, right? A la kind of the blues 5 of this B flat 7, which by the wonders of subdominant minor functional harmony, so it's kind of like C major to F7 to F minor in a way, like a B flat 7, sharp 11 is like an F minor major 7 with B flat at the bass. Another way to think about it. And I mentioned that because that progression is in a million jazz tunes, you know, sort of 4 minor back to 1. And I learned that from Hank Mackey as subdominant minor. I heard around here some people call that like a backdoor 2-5-1, which in this case there's no backdoor 5-1 like B flat 7 back to C. I never heard that term growing up, and I kind of like my subdominant minor thing. So it's kind of 1-4, and yeah, it's a 4 dominant. I notice on a lot of versions, so listen, that F7 chord doesn't necessarily get outlined, but I kind of like it when I'm playing because you get that guide tone line, right, of like E, E flat, D, and you can play some of those dominant cycle ideas that I think are a big part of Monk's music harmonically. I mean, I hear it in a lot of songs. So I try to bring that in sometimes, but you could probably just ignore it and just go like C major to F minor. And then the next part, it's interesting here because you have C major, F7 again, and then instead of going to the B flat 7, you have B minor, E7, although it's kind of functionally ends up in the same place, just the harmonic rhythm gets maybe stretched out a little bit because E7 and B flat 7, right, share a tritone, although instead of going back to C, you go down to A7, so E7 is actually 5 of A7, then you have A flat 7, which is like D7, right, G7, so you sort of have that cycle. With tritone substitution, you could really think of it as like, also you could think C major 7, B7, E7, so like, sorry. You think like, right, you could think like C major, B7, same as F7, right, through the tritone substitution, that's 5 of E7. B minor E7, like an E7 sus to E7, A7, D7, G7. So it's very functional, is my point. Like that other Monk tune called Functional. And sometimes I'll play over that when I'm improvising over this tune, just to kind of give it an interesting, against this harmony, like the band's playing this. I'm like, so I'm really outlining. I could go. those chords, or just, you know, stick a little closer to it. And then the bridge is just a wide open expanse of C7, 8 bars of C7, and you can do whatever you want with it. You know, it could be Mixolydian, with chromaticism. Charlie Rouse at some point goes, kind of puts a flat 9 on top of his sort of Mixolydian stuff. Make it Lydian dominant, get that F sharp in there. That would be kind of like adhering to the jazz minor theoretical concept that I talked about in my previous video. That was kind of how I learned about melodic minor harmony. Coming up, the idea that C7 doesn't go to F, right? It's not a 5-1, so it's a C7 that would be, you could play what Hank and Emily Remler and Steve Mazikowski back in the day described as like the jazz minor scale off the 5th, so like G melodic minor, right? Which then I learned was called a Lydian dominant. You know, these names are kind of arbitrary. I was joking with my buddy Noel Johnston last night. Shout out to Noel Johnston, about how we should rename the modes. Like we could call the Dorian scale could be Mixolydian flat 3, and the Ionian scale could be you know, Lydian flat 4. I don't know. The names are kind of arbitrary, but the sound, we need to have a term, right, to describe the sound some kind of way. So that's a very specific sound of that C7 and G melodic minor scale. Although it gets kind of mixed up in my mind, and because I always play some chromaticism, so you could make it. You could definitely do some diminished stuff over that. See that those 8 bars. Choose your diminished pattern. That thing, anything. At one point, he definitely plays on the melody like a G flat triad over C. So you could maybe, do like a I don't know what that was. Triad pair like C and G flat might sound cool together. That gives you a significant part of the C half whole diminished scale anyway. And I guess you could sneak in some kind of 5-1 before you go back to the last A section, although it's kind of cool to just have it be that C7 going back to C major. And let it just sort of not resolve. Sometimes it's cool to just let the C7 go back to C major and live with the sort of modality of that and the non-functionality of it. But the melody too, I try to get some of those chord voicings. It's a little bit of an issue sometimes for the left hand, but I kind of play those 3 notes and then do a hammer on there, so I can try to catch the chord on that B note on top. And I try to get this little dissonant chord like D for the F7, D, E flat, G. And then get the B flat 7 there. And then this. That's a hard one, because I still want to grab that chord. And then here, it's more like one of my thumbs, so it's not too harsh, that part. Bridge. I want to get those real dissonant things. Anyway, just overall, a really cool, fun song to improvise on, and I think that's why there's so many recordings of it. My goodness. So anyway, I'm going to play a few choruses and explore some of these ideas, and I hope you dig it. Monk Stream, y'all.